Okay, well, we're going to get started so you can make the end of the Cowboys game and see if they won or not. Thank you all for coming to hear about this trip. I think I've told you multiple times now, but I was invited on the trip by First Methodist Mansfield. So this was our team, except for the guy in the very middle who has the paint on his shirt. His name is Alicia. I'll tell you about him in just a second. But everybody else is on our team. The guy on the far left there is David Alexander, and he's the pastor of First Methodist Mansfield. And we've known each other now for probably 15 years. We've been pretty close together for a while. When the pandemic hit, David and Brady, who's the guy to his left in the green shirt, and I started meeting together to sort of process how to lead together in the middle of the pandemic. You know, nobody had done this before, and we've started meeting weekly, and we've just continued to do that. So that's been a great gift for us. We meet on Thursday mornings. And I have been hearing about ZOE Empowers for the whole time I've known David, because First Methodist Mansfield has been supporting ZOE Empowers for 20 years, basically since the beginning of the ZOE ministry. They have, I'll give some more explanation as to what these things mean in a minute, but they have 18 groups that they sponsor as a church. And that's pretty incredible when you're going to hear about what is. They have 10 groups in Rwanda and 8 groups now in Tanzania. And they have raised, in the 20 years of their supporting ZOE, they have raised over $2 million for ZOE just from their church. And they have affected what they believe to be 6,000 kids. So First Mansfield is heavily invested, and they have been invested for a long time. And so David was going on this trip. Last he went on a trip was in 2015 to Rwanda, and he said to us, hey, I would really love for you to come and see ZOE on behalf of your church. And so Brady and I said, yeah, we'll go. That would be fun for us to be together, and we'll go learn about this ministry. So you see David and Brady and myself, and then the woman who's in the front with looks like papyrus in her hands, that is Susan, and she is the director of missions at First Methodist Mansfield. So she's the one that really organized this trip. And then in between her and the guy in the white shirt is Alicia. He's an artist. He's a graduate of the ZOE program. And then that's Andrew, who is on the mission staff at First Mansfield. And then that's Patricia. She's just a member of the community in Mansfield, wanted to come on this trip. She's been on a number of trips with First Mansfield. And then the guy all the way to our right is Michael Proctor, who was the videographer and the photographer on our trip. He happens to be one of my students from UTA Wesley. So it was really good for us to spend 10 days together, because I discipled Michael through his time in college. So that was really, really fun. So what I want to do to start us off is there's a video that Karen's going to push play on. It's the very first one there at the top, Karen. And I'll just take a minute to listen to this.
ZOE Empowers was organized in 2004 as a response to the orphan and vulnerable children from the AIDS pandemic. In late 2006, there was an overage of funding, and the board wanted to invest it instead of just putting it out there. And they were introduced to a Rwandan social worker named Epiphany Mujawamana. And she became frustrated by what she saw as a cycle of relief and dependency on that relief. Epiphany started asking the question, there's these desperately economically poor young people. What would they need in their lives to be able to stand on their own feet and never need charity again? What ZOE Empowers has found is a 3-year, community-based, indigenous-led empowerment program where the young people are actually able to take the lead in their own journey out of poverty. They're able to become safe and healthy, skilled for long-term success, and able to live meaningful lives wrapped in layers of community. One of the distinctives about ZOE Empowers is the level to which the young people take the lead in their own journey out of poverty. ZOE only has 1 staff per 1,000 orphan children in the program. Epiphany found that if there were too many adults in the room, the young people would never take their own authority. I'm excited about the future and the possibilities. If we grew 30% year over year for the next 11 years, we would have over 1 million young people being empowered in the program and over 800,000 already graduated. People are starting to recognize that these young people have skills and they have abilities, and what they lack is opportunity.
So you can go to that next picture there, Karen, just a picture of us again.
ZOE Empowers was organized.
So again, this is our team. The travel over was 19 hours. It was a 12-hour flight to Istanbul, Turkey, which was fun to be on the ground in Istanbul. Just a fun fact, Istanbul has 6 million people who live there. I was like, what? That's a lot of people who live. Thankfully, we were only in the airport. And then we jumped onto a plane. We flew over on a 787, it's a big Dreamliner. And then we jumped on a 737, which is what you fly like on Southwest. And it was a 7-hour flight all the way down to Tanzania. We were in Kilimanjaro International Airport, which is just on the northern border with Kenya. Kilimanjaro is a big mountain there that is very much identified around the world. In fact, on the flight, the woman sitting next to me was coming from England. She and 3 of her friends were heading down there to climb Kilimanjaro. It's 20,000 feet, so it's a huge mountain, and people come from all over the world to climb it. And so we landed there near Kilimanjaro, but we landed at 2:30 in the morning. Then we left at 2:30 in the morning. So I never got to see Kilimanjaro, which was disappointing. But we drove about 45 minutes south of there to a city called Arusha, which is really kind of a tourist city. There's a lot that happens in Arusha, but most people will come and stay in Arusha so they can go see Kilimanjaro, and then they can head out to the west of Tanzania to go on safari. The Serengeti is out to the west, way far, and then a little closer in is the Ngorongoro crater. And so Arusha is it's a really busy city, somewhere around 650,000 people who live there. So it was a pretty busy city, and there was a lot going on. We got there late Friday or early Friday morning, so pretty much lost all of Thursday. But when we had a few hours in the hotel to take a nap. I think we slept for about 4 hours, and then it was up and running. And our first meeting was with the ZOE Empowers team. So the ZOE Empowers team, Karen, what's the next picture there? Yeah, okay, go for it. So the ZOE Empowers team, this is Therese Shumbusho, and she is the country director for ZOE Empowers in Tanzania. And when I say country director, the only place where ZOE is basically in Arusha or in the surrounding villages and countryside. So Therese is actually a pastor of Zion City Church, and she does that and also runs ZOE Empowers. And so a very busy woman, a very strong leader, and really wonderful to be around her. She has a team of, she has a couple of administrators that work with her, and then she has 5 facilitators whose job is to go out to all of these groups that have formed of ZOE children, and they lead their groups. Each facilitator has about 15 groups. So 5 facilitators, 15 groups, and then each group is made up of about 25 to 26 kids. So you can see how many kids are being reached right now as this program is currently going on. They think that they have reached, in the history of ZOE in Tanzania, which just goes back to 2019, about 7,000 kids have been affected by ZOE ministry. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. We met with the team so they could kind of give us an overview of what the program was. I was purposefully ignorant. I did not go in with doing a lot of research to try to learn all about it before I left. I really wanted to learn about it on the ground there. And so when we got there, had our meeting with the team, they shared with us the approach that they take to ministry, and it goes something like this. They have a number of pillars that they teach primarily in the first year, and then they continue to just solidify in the 3 years that follow. And those are education, health and hygiene, entrepreneurship, money management, food security and agriculture, child rights, and supporting their community. And so they spend their time, each week they meet with the facilitators meet with their groups, and they're teaching them about those 6 pillars. It makes sense. You'll see some pictures a little bit of, but it makes sense. They have to teach hygiene. These are kids. I say kids. They're 16 to 23. Okay, but these are people who are coming out of extreme poverty, and it's really hard for us to process that. I don't know if you've ever been to a developing country before. We saw very similar things in Belize. We used to take students to Belize every year. We did it for about 5 or 6 years. And when you go to a developing country, you see poverty that you just never experience here. It's actually more of the norm in the country than it is not. And there's no middle class typically in these countries. And while Tanzania is a healthy democracy, seemingly, they are a developing country, so there's an incredible amount of poverty. So it's very normalized for them to live in poverty, and these are kids that are actually on the lower end of that poverty scale. Most of them are considered orphans or vulnerable children, and what that typically means, this is a patriarchal society, and what it means is that they don't have a father who can help provide for them. Either the father has left or the father has died. And so these kids are typically the oldest of their siblings, and they have a mom who's maybe trying to make it, but is struggling. They say they typically work what they call casual jobs, which are basically day labor. And what typically will happen is they'll go work for somebody, say doing ironing in their home or cleaning or something like that, and they'll pay them once. They'll have them come again, they'll pay them again, and then the third time they'll say, well, I can't pay you right now, but I'll pay you next week. And so they come the next week. Well, I owe you twice, I'll pay you the next week. And on it goes until they realize they're never going to get paid. And so they've spent all this time working, and they have no income. And so many of these kids, as they told their stories to us, they barely scrap out one meal a day, if even that. Their clothes are tattered. Their hair is also, and they have not learned basic hygiene. Like one of the girls said, she learned how to clean her private parts as ZOE began to teach them this. So they're dealing with very intense poverty, and they're teaching these pillars to these groups. Like I said, the groups they consist of 25 kids. There were some groups that had 23, some had 26, but their goal is 25 kids. And they meet once a week in a lot of times it's local churches. I think most of the groups that we went to visit were in local churches. And when I say local churches, they're not like this. I'll show you a picture here in a minute of a Lutheran church that we went to. But the group meets there, and they exchange ideas, they encourage one another. They're very supportive of this work, along with their actually learning. In the way the group works, the way the process works is it's a 3-year program. You start your first year, and you're not like given a hand out of poverty. What they do is they start to train these students in the ways of ZOE. So health and hygiene, spiritual development, and entrepreneurship are the things that they begin to teach. And once the students have chosen what they want to do for their career, then they send them to any training that they need, or they begin to give them an entry-level kit that can help them get started. So one of the groups that we went to see had some boys that have become mechanics. They said they work in the garage. That's how they say it there. But they're mechanics. and we saw that they had been given a small toolbox with all of the basic tools that they would need to work on cars. In the first year, they get an initial grant where they can set up their businesses, and then in the second year, they get what was referred to as a boost, or a second grant that can help them develop their business even more. Once that happens, then in the third year, it's really just making sure they have everything set and they have all the support they need so that when they graduate, they can go out on their own, which is what happens. In the process of the group, we learned that they're not only there to support one another just with ideas and encouragement, but they also share in what's called a village community bank, or they called it VCOBA. They teach them how to basically open up a bank within themselves so that they can support each other through loans. The way it starts is within their first year, everybody begins, every time they meet, they begin to put in money into the local community bank. They had incredible accounting, bookkeeping. Even the groups had their own accountant. They had their own accountant. So everyone puts in money, and then eventually, when they have a certain amount of principal in there, each student can begin taking out loans if they want them, and they pay them back with interest back into the community bank, the VCOBA. It's really fascinating, and it has helped these kids, these students, begin to develop their businesses. So we initially went and met some of the graduates. So Karen, if you'll go to the next photo. This is a girl named Felister. She's a graduate of the program, and she has a salon business. One of the things that she told us was when she began, Zoe gave her a hair dryer and some brushes and combs. And now she is proud that her business has developed. They've taught her how to take her capital and reinvest it into the business. And now she has 2 hair dryers. She sells hair extensions, and she sells shoes in her business. And while we were there, she had multiple people in there that she was working on, and she was so proud to show us her business. So we got to see Felister and her program. The next is, we'll head to the next picture there. Okay, this is a guy named Elisha, who actually is an artist, if you can't tell by his hoodie there. He had paint all over him, as if he had done it on purpose. I have no idea. He probably just takes his brush and wipes it off on his shirt. But Elisha is also a graduate, and he's an artist. So he gathers in this community. He started the program in 2019 and graduated at the end of 2021, and said he's always had a passion for painting, but never thought he'd be able to afford the startup cost to start a business. So after he completed the training for Zoe, they provided him with a startup kit of paint, brushes, and canvas. And he began to partner with other local artists to open up their own art studio in this public garden where we went. It was actually a beautiful area. And they ended up building a little hut where they can keep all of their stuff out of concrete. But plastic bottles are a big deal over there. You can't drink the water. So everybody drinks water out of bottles, or most people do. And so there is plastic everywhere. And sometimes it's just trash on the streets. So they took plastic bottles, filled them with sand, and used them as bricks, which was really kind of cool. And they have set this up as a co-op there, and when you walk down, they have all of their art hung. His art, he signs it Lishi, which is just his, I guess, pet name or whatever. And really, it was fascinating to hear his story, where he has started this business. Lishi's art business has allowed him to put his 2 siblings through school. So what you can see is that when a student graduates and has their business, it doesn't just affect their own life, but it affects the lives of their siblings and often their parents. That's why ZOE says that they have affected 7,000 children's lives since 2019. Because, for instance, if it was me and I was able to support my 3 siblings, now all of a sudden my siblings can get all the way through school where I had to leave early. And they can have a future that can really change the entire life of that family. So it's really pretty impressive. Would you go to the next slide here? Okay, this was a painting that he had painted, the 3 lions. And so Susan wanted to buy that because she has 3 grandchildren. And she was like, this reminds me of my grandkids. So she bought that painting. We took money with us. We all wanted to support the local businesses as much as we could. So we all brought money with us. Just a quick aside, I wasn't really going to tell you much about the culture, but we'll talk a little bit about it. They use Tanzanian shillings, T shillings, and $3 in American dollars is worth about 10,000 T shillings. And so they give you one of their pieces of money is a 10,000 shilling piece. And so it was kind of a headache trying to figure out, okay, how much am I spending here? Yeah. Okay, so so we would sit down at dinner and we'd be like, whoa, that thing is 35,000. Oh, never mind, that's 950 or something, you know. Okay, go to the next picture there, Karen. Okay, this was another a boy who had graduated the program, and I got to find my notes here. His name is Jonas. You spell it like Jones, but they pronounce it Jonas. Jonas has a really incredible story. He started back in 2019, graduated in 2021. He first started a business of selling fruits and vegetables, and he made enough money to open up what they call a studio next door. A studio is really 2 things. He sells movies on USB drives, and then he also bought a PlayStation and set up a little separate room inside of his shop where people could come and pay money and play PlayStation. Because you don't have PlayStation in your home there. And so he started this business. Both of them have been so successful. He handed the fruits and vegetable business to his mom so she could have it and she could have her own support. And then he opened up a second studio across town. And he's doing so well. Actually, the ZOE staff were like, this guy is crazy. He is easily the wealthiest of all of the graduates. He's just done so well. And so we said, what are you going to do next? Because we knew he was thinking of something else. So I'm going to sell cell phones. He already knows that's what he's going to do. What makes Jonas so important is that a part of the ZOE program helped him understand the power of forgiveness. His dad left them and left them in extreme poverty, and he has carried around anger and resentment. And he knows where his dad is. And he was able, through his faith, to come to a place of forgiveness for his father, and has even been able to support his father now, who left him. It's an incredible story. It's actually one of the blog posts that is on the ZOE Empower website, if you want to go read that. But just an incredible story. We got to meet him. He was a sweet man, and he supports his siblings as well, and his mom. So that was really fun to meet him. They made fun of me for pointing as I prayed. But that's how I pray sometimes. David said, you were telling the Holy Spirit where to go. Okay, if you can go to the next page. Okay, so the next day, that was all Friday. So remember, we got there Friday morning at 2:30, and then we went around and met these graduates. We crashed that night, got up the next morning, and we got on a bus, and we headed out to a village where we met. This is a church where we're meeting, and we were met by a third-year group. So you can see we went from graduates to third year, then we'll go second year and first year. This third-year group met us with incredible dancing and joy. It was so fun to get off the bus and have them dance. Ginger's over here laughing because I did send a video. I didn't even think about how I looked in this video of them dancing, and I'm in the background trying to dance, and it looks like a wet noodle. It's so bad. You can see me in the background there, but It was such great joy. And their pride and confidence in who they are and what they're doing was so palpable. It was really incredible. They reported to us that they have 26 members. 7 are in the salon business, 4 in the garage business, 4 who are carpenters, 1 tailor, 2 motorbike taxi drivers, which I wish I'd take a picture of this. Y'all. Okay, someone on a motorbike, someone on the back, sometimes 2 people on the back, and oftentimes they're carrying something. So I'm telling you, these are all things I saw people carry. A windshield of a car, holding it like this while the guy's driving, a 10-foot piece of conduit, balanced like this. It was crazy. I didn't see any plywood, but a lot of wood being carried. I mean, it was nuts. But people who are motorbike taxi drivers, and then 1 stationary business. Go to the next picture there, Karen. Let's see what this is. Okay, that's more dancing. You can see the girl who has the kind of shawl over, the blue shawl over her. She would be part of the Maasai tribe. Most of the Maasai that we met are very modernized, but they still wear Maasai garb for more traditional or special occasions. And the fact that we were coming was a special occasion to each of the groups. And so she put on her Maasai clothing. This was them just dancing. So you can go to the next picture. Each group has a group project that they also work on. So they not only have their Vikoba, their village community bank, but they also have a group project that they do together and they sell in the local community, the local village. This group makes these like donuts, okay? And they call them bites. It took me a minute to figure out what they were saying when they said bites, but it's this. Just think about the food in Africa is very normal to us for the most part. It's just more bland, okay? So these are donuts, but they don't have as much sugar. But they were actually really, really good. They package them up, they take them to the local markets, and they sell them until they're gone, and then they make more. And everybody takes a turn making the bites, although they did say some are better than others at making the bites, you know. So they were really proud of this process, and they wanted to show us how they made them, so they did that for us, and we got to take some pictures. You can go to the next picture. This is one of the students in that third group. His name is Frank. He is not doing an advertisement for Planet Fitness. Somehow one of our shirts from Planet Fitness made its way all the way to Tanzania, and he is wearing that shirt from a secondhand store. Frank is a farmer. He started under ZOE in his work as a farmer, and he started growing tomatoes, and then realized in the off seasons, in the wintertime, he could grow a second crop, and so he started growing eggplant, and that's what he does now. He's 20 years old. He lives with his mom and his 2 siblings. Before ZOE, he did many day labor jobs, and many times he did not get paid. If he did, he got paid very little. He would often go many days without food, he told us. After going through the ZOE training, he started with a few goats, and he sold them in order to rent a piece of farmland to grow and sell vegetables. Specifically, butternut squash was what he started with. His profits allowed him to repair the small rental house his family was living in, and then he expanded his farm by renting more land, added tomatoes and eggplant to his inventory, and now his growing business has allowed him to keep his siblings in school, and he has started buying bricks and sheet metal to build his own house for him and his family. And now he actually, I remember him saying this, he loves that he is now able to buy nice clothes and look handsome. He wants to own his own land and support local orphanages. Many of these students, after they start their own businesses, begin to turn to the community and trying to train other people in the community to do the same thing that they're doing. It's really pretty incredible. Okay, the next picture, this is Salma. She is 20 years old. She is a tailor. She has 2 younger siblings. And before ZOE, she was going around cleaning up people's houses, oftentimes would not get paid. Some families would accuse her of stealing. so they could pay her less or not pay her at all. I mean, that's a good tactic. You stole from me, so I'm not going to pay you. One of the ladies accused Salma of having an affair with her husband and then threatened her life. And so she escaped. And she didn't know where to turn. And she found ZOE. And she completed her training to be a tailor. ZOE provided her with her first sewing machine. And over time, Salma has expanded her business to also sell higher-end fabrics. She's currently training 2 other girls in her community free of charge. And the money she makes from her business has allowed her to support her mom and siblings and to provide 3 meals per day for all of them. She also provides food for other needy kids in the community. It's just amazing. Okay, go to the next slide there, please. Oh, okay, so that was Saturday. On Sunday morning, we got up, and I was invited by Pastor Treese, to preach. Actually, they call her Mama Treese. For those who are honored in the culture, or if you're just older, they call you Mama or Baba, which is father. And so one day I got called Baba Joseph, and I was like, is it because I'm old? But Mama Treese invited one of the 3 of us to preach. David and Brady were like, no, we don't need to preach. I could tell her feelings were kind of getting hurt, so I was like, Treese, I would love to preach for you. And so I got to preach there in Zion City Church with an interpreter for Swahili. They do this every week. They do English and Swahili every week. He was really, really good. And if you want to go watch it, you can go watch it on Zion City Church YouTube. You've heard the sermon before. I preached on Christ as the living water that flows from within us. And it was a fun experience for me. I did feel quite underdressed because I did not plan to preach. So no jacket, no tie, and I think I had like hiking pants on. So whatever, we made it. But it was really fun for us. If you go to the next slide, I think this is a picture. Oh, okay. At the church, they have a radio station that's 24/7 Christian radio. And Mama Treese has a radio show that she does 3 times a week, teaches Bible study. Many of their pastors serve by teaching Bible study. Most of the pastors are dual career pastors. They work and they serve in the ministry in the church. And so it expands their ability to do ministry. A number of people who were a part of the church were on the staff of ZOE Empowers. Okay, this was our next group. They also greeted us with dancing, as you saw in that last photo. Karen, will you just go back to that last photo real quick? You went, yeah. Yeah, okay. So do you see the woman in the red dress there on the bottom right? She is the local mentor. And she was the mentor for 2 of the groups that we saw that week, or that day. She is a local woman who is very honored by the community, and so they asked her to step into that role as mentor. It's an honor to be asked, but it's also an honor, like they only ask those who are honored. And so they think a lot of her, so her advice means a lot. And this woman specifically has really gone above and beyond the work of the mentor. She doesn't just meet with her groups, but she actually does a lot of recruiting for ZOE. She finds the kids, she knows who they are, and she says, you're coming with me, I'm getting you involved in ZOE, because she has seen how hard their lives are. But Mama Treese dances much better than me. She's there in the white dress. Most of the Africans dance a lot better than me. Okay, then the next picture is also of the group. This is year 2 group. Their name is the Dawn Empowerment Group, and their group project is to make soap. So they were showing us how they make soap from scratch in that bucket. They walked us through the process of making the soap, and then they actually will bottle it and put a label on it. They showed us that as well, and they sell it in the local markets. All of the money that they receive from that goes into their Vikoba and can be used for loans and things. Okay, go to the next picture there. Oh, okay. So you can just stay there, Karen. But I just want to tell you about a couple of people. I didn't get their picture in time, so I just want to tell you about a couple of pictures or a couple of people. One boy whose name is Erickson. Oh, I forgot to tell you that in the group it's very organized. They have 4 important roles. They have the chair of the group. They have the secretary of the group, who the chair organizes everything. The secretary takes notes, and they were the ones that gave us a presentation on their group. How many people do what, how many lives have been affected, all those kinds of things. They have a pastor of the group, and so one of the boys' name was Erickson, and he was the pastor of the group. And then they also have what they call a disciplinarian. Not what you think. If you come to the meeting late, if you're not clean, you can be charged a fine that goes into the Vacoba. And so the disciplinarian is the one that decides who has to pay the fine. Erickson has one younger sibling, and he's the pastor of the group. Before Zoe, he lost both his parents at a young age, and so he struggled to have food for him and his siblings, or his sibling. He decided to join a gang, he told us. He had to have some kind of community, and he would do day labor jobs, including working in a garage, but most of the time he would not get paid. So he would often walk outside of restaurants in order to eat some of the thrown out leftover food. So one day, the ZOE group mentor found Erickson, told him about the program. I remember him telling us this. He thought it was a joke at first, but he said, I might as well try it. Until Zoe started putting him through job training for free, and he started to believe maybe it was real. After training, he was provided with a startup kit to open his own barbershop, and he is now able to provide 3 meals a day for him and his siblings. And just remember, this group is still just in year 2. Another guy that we met who was a very dynamic kid, actually he was a little older, his name was Eliza, and he was the chairman of the group. He lives with his mom and his 3 younger siblings, and when he was young, his mom got very sick and was not able to work and provide for the family, so he would do day labor jobs, but he'd get paid very little. That was kind of a common trend that we would hear from all of them. He heard about Zoe through one of the kids of the community. He started to get free training, and now he is a carpenter. So we got to actually go and see his carpentry business, and he was finishing a couch. And I looked at the couch and legitimately thought, he found a couch and he's just repairing the couch. And so I said, at what point did you start working on this couch? And he said, oh, I made it. And I was like, did you make the frame and everything? And he said, yes. And we were sitting there looking at it. He actually had us put in the final staples of the cloth on the couch. It was incredible seam job. And we looked in, and he had a sewing machine in his shop, and he had built another frame that was waiting to be covered as well. It was incredible, and this kid's doing this. We said, how much are you going to sell this for? He said $150. Well, whatever it was in T shillings, but $150. And I was thinking, boy, you'd make a killing in the United States, you know. It was really incredible. But he said through his profits, he is able to get a water system installed in his house, and he can now wear nice clothes, and he said, look fresh, while being able to eat whatever he wants. The next day, we went to see this group. This is a first-year group. They're called the Fighter Empowerment Group. Fighters Empowerment Group. As we gathered for every meeting, they had a saying that was there to help them grow not only a love for their country, but a love for serving each other. And so they would say, someone would start off and say, ZOE Africa, and everybody in the group would say, love Tanzania. So I'll tell you the story about pronunciation of the country in a minute. So ZOE Africa, love Tanzania. The individual would then say, love Tanzania, and everybody would say, ZOE Empowers, really loud, every single time. And most of the time, when a kid would get up to tell their story, they would say, ZOE Africa, love Tanzania, ZOE Empowers, and then they'd tell their story. Next person, ZOE Africa, and we was like, okay. But this is the group yelling out ZOE Empowers, and every time they do it, they would stand up and cheer like that. And so Michael caught a great picture of that while we were there. Okay, so this is really important. This is a year one group, okay? But they have been meeting for 6 months. They are leagues ahead of the other groups that we visited. We visited 4 other groups that have been meeting for only 2 or 3 weeks. So they just got started. And you're going to see some of the differences here in a minute, just in 6 months of being in the program. We're meeting in a Lutheran church here. The Lutheran denomination is actually the largest there in Tanzania, oddly enough. But we're meeting in a Lutheran church, and we played a game with them. If you go to the next slide there, picture. Oh, never mind. I don't know if I put up a picture of the game. I'll tell you about it in a second. This was their pastor, and she was sharing all of the pastors shared a little devotion as we got started each time, and every one of them was amazing. And I thought, if they can do that, you guys can preach a sermon too. So just watch out for when I ask you to get up in front of everybody. This group shared with us in just 6 months. They have 5 people who are in salon business, 6 tailors, 2 garages, that's mechanics, 2 poultry farmers, 1 livestock farmer, 2 studios, that's the selling of the movies and USB drives, 1 cooking oil or soap shop, 2 fruit and vegetable stands, and 2 beans and maize stands. And their group project was to make liquid soap, body lotion, and petroleum jelly. All of that from scratch. It is really amazing. They bottle it, they put labels on it, and they sell it out in the markets. They were really quite forward-thinking. They also make a homemade tea spice that they use as an alternative to a traditional tea that they have there called, I'm trying to remember the name of the tea. It doesn't matter. But they had there's a traditional tea, but it seemed to be affecting some women in their pregnancies. So they developed a new tea that is the same flavors, but doesn't have the stuff in it that is affecting women's pregnancies. And so they're trying to help women who had fertility problems. So the group created this natural tea spice alternative. They stated that their group goals were to move forward and increase their Vikoba, because they had just gotten started, because they wanted to support the women of the tribe who are in the hospital there. So you can see that they're all wearing Maasai garb. We were in Maasai territory here, and many of them are more modernized Maasai. They don't wear the garb. They're not out on farms. But they dress up like this for special occasions, and so for us, they dressed up like that. We had a couple of testimonies that came. Go to the next picture there, Karen. Let me see what it is. Okay, so this was the secretary of the group, and you can see her clothing. It was really kind of cool. I mean, really beautiful patterns, and it was neat to see them dressed up in that way. We heard 2 special stories from this group. Rosie lived with her mom, but her mom would leave the house and not come back for days. Rosie was born with some medical issues that required her to go to the hospital when she got older, and her neighbors were the ones to take care of her when she got sick and were the ones to take her to the hospital. She ended up having a stomach operation, and many people told her that she was probably going to die. Then, as she got well, things declined in her home. She had a stepfather who raped her. And from that, she contracted AIDS. And so, through everything, she feels that she says she feels strong enough to go through the training and confident that she will get through it and escape poverty. So this was actually more of a common story than you would think. Someone who's been raped, or maybe in their previous life had sex with a number of people, and they had contracted HIV or AIDS, which is an epidemic over there. And there were also many other diseases that these students had from poverty. And so one of the things that ZOE does from the very beginning is they meet them where they are, and they help them find the medical assistance that they need, whether it's medication or doctors or simply just training. They help them to figure out how to take care of these illnesses. They get them at bay so that they can continue on in their training and make it through the program. Another girl that we met was Delata. She is 19 years old, and she has 3 younger siblings. She lives with her mom, but her mom was not able to make a lot of money, couldn't afford to pay the rent, so they were kicked out of their home. She would go days at a time without eating. She just finished her first session of training to be a tailor, and she's working hard to be able to grow her business and provide for her family. So these were some of the tougher stories. So we're going from graduates to third years to second year. All of a sudden, we were meeting with these first year groups, and you could feel the weight in the group. As they got up to tell their stories, many of them came to tears. And their group, many of them struggled to not cry in the middle of these stories. And what was really hard is to think, this is an empowerment program, it's not a handout program. And what that means is, they're not going to go and provide for them from the very beginning. They're not just going to say, here's your handout, here's your house. Because this is a long game. And so a number of these kids, especially in their first year, were still struggling with poverty. But they were showing up every week. And they had a glimmer of hope because of what they were finding with ZOE. It was really impressive. So like this girl, Delata, still living in poverty, but showing up every week, going through her training so that she can provide for her family. And we were able to say to them, look, we have met people that are down the road from you who have gotten further in. You're going to be able to do this, and we're so proud of you. That tended to be our role, was we would listen to their stories, and then we would stand up, we would introduce ourselves, tell them who we represented. So I often said, I'm from First Methodist Church in Weatherford, and we all say hi from the United States, And then our job was to encourage them in their stories, pray for them, and try to bless them as much as we could. If you go to the next slide there. Oh, I wanted you to see this picture. This was one of the students. I didn't feel like I should really tell her story. She's dealing with a lot in her life, even worse than what I've already told you. This girl, so this is Jeremiah standing next to her. He's one of the ZOE Empowers facilitators, and he has 16 groups. This is not one of his groups, but he went with us the entire time we were there, and he was our translator. So he's translating for this girl. I would have guessed this girl was 10 to 12 years old. She's 18. Malnourishment is the reason why she is as big as she is. And this was a very common story. Kids malnourished until they can begin to provide for themselves and start eating. And so the difference between the first year students and the third year students was unbelievable. Just, you could see it with their skin, how much healthier they were, because they've been empowered and learned how to be healthy. It's really incredible. All right, so go to the next picture here. That's the Lutheran Church. Very common sight for what a church looks like there, especially in the villages. And you'd say, oh, they must be building it. I'm pretty sure that stuff's been up there for like 5 or 10 years. Very common, I think, there. They're kind of always updating and always working on things, but that's their church, the Lutheran Church, in this little village where we were. And so, okay, you can go to the next one. This was the final day. We actually met with 3 different groups at the same time on this day. And these were all 3 groups that First Mansfield sponsors. So that was a really cool moment, because the students were actually able to see the people who are part of the church sponsoring them. And Pastor David was able to get up in front of them and tell them, just encourage them and tell them how they were behind them and pray over them. But one of the things that happened was that he stood up in front of them and he said, 2 years from now, it's like he just couldn't help himself. And then all of a sudden he goes, oh, I promise to come back in 2 years. He said, 2 years from now, I'm going to get off this bus and I'm going to see you guys and you're going to greet me with dancing. They did not greet us with dancing. They have been meeting for 2 to 4 weeks, each of these 3 groups. They were, the word downtrodden is a great word for what they were like. It was quiet when we walked in the room. They were somber. They were exhausted, and they were overwhelmed. And so David got to get up in front of them and say, in 2 years, you're going to greet us when we get off this bus, and you're going to be dancing. And it was it was a cool moment. He had done a similar thing to a first-year group that we had met a couple of days earlier, and he thought that he understood that they were one of their groups. And so David said, we are supporting you. We're a group that supports you. And we got on the bus and we found out that they have not been supported yet. No one has claimed them yet. And so David was like, oh, I guess they were only going to have 7 groups. He goes, I guess we have 8 groups now. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but that's how much that ends up costing. But he was like, I have to go back and report that I committed our church to one more group. This was one of the girls from the initial group, from this final group that we met. This is first year. You can just see her hair is not as clean. Her clothes are a little bit more tattered and random. This is her baby. She told us the story that she has struggled through life. Her mom had kicked her out of the home, and she ended up being raped. And this was the baby from that rape. And she's desperately trying to move forward in life and found ZOE. She actually said the words, I have lost all hope. But she's here as just an attempt to succeed. I don't know if you can really see it from as far away as you are, but the baby does not have a diaper. That is a plastic bag that's tied around his waist. And actually, in this group, there happened to be a lot more babies than we had seen the entire time. And they were all like this. No diapers. They just have this plastic bag wrapped around them. The stories, the stories went on and on from this group. Are there any more pictures there, Karen? Oh, okay, this is the group. These are all 3 groups, and this is David praying over them. It really was a very special moment. But I can't, it's hard to describe where this first year group was. And to be able to see that versus those who are in their 3rd year and the graduates, it was so impressive to me. And the success rate, they said, in Tanzania since 2019 is like above 99%. They've only had 1 or 2 students who have not made it through the entire program. And it's just incredible. We were blown away by the love that the facilitators had over their groups. Jeremiah talked about his work as an individual who grew up in Arusha, and he goes out to some of these Maasai villages. The Maasai tribe is the oldest tribe in Tanzania. Maasai originally started in Tanzania, northern Tanzania. They are, many of them have modernized, and they live in cities, and they go about normal life there in Africa, but there are a lot of them that live the traditional way of life. They're still polygamous. We learned a number of things, like boys aren't circumcised until they're 15. They said, if you cry, after the circumcision, you get special clothing, like you've made it into manhood. So the Maasai garb, there's different stages where they change their clothing. And after you've been circumcised, you get new clothing. And you also get some peacock feathers. And they said, if you cry, you get the short feathers. And you have a different garb that you wear. If you close your eyes, you have to keep them closed, or it's the same thing. It was like crazy, And but up until recently, they also circumcised women. And you're like, what? not to be overly descriptive, but they take away a woman's ability to enjoy sex so that they end up only becoming a vessel. And that's so that they can just produce more and more kids. They often live in communal settings, still in mud huts. And so in the Maasai communities where they've come in, they have formed groups and they've gone really well, but they have had instances where some of the women have been kidnapped by Maasai men who want them as their wives. And so ZOE has come in with the police to protect the women who are in these groups. And so now the Maasai know that ZOE is serious, and so they don't really affect them anymore. But Jeremiah was telling us he tries to leave those areas before it gets dark, because he knows that the Maasai don't like him, because they're empowering not only boys but girls as well, and that's not a big deal in Maasai culture, you know. So a lot of really interesting things that we saw and we learned. And are there any more pictures there, Karen? Okay, one more. Oh yeah, this is just the final picture of them praying over some of the women. We'll just leave that up as I give you some of the final details, and then you can ask any questions you want. So the question that's before us is if we want to support a ZOE group. Supporting a ZOE group is $9,000 per year, and you make a 3-year commitment. So it's $27,000 total for one group. And what you're doing is you're only supporting them financially. So we would send money to ZOE Empowers, and it would specifically sponsor a group in Tanzania, and most likely it would be one of the groups that I met. What it would mean is we would know all of their names, so that as a congregation we could pass out cards with the names of the kids on them, and everyone could be praying over those kids throughout the 3-year process. It also means that whenever we would like, we could take a trip there as well. I would guess that if we decided to support ZOE one group at a time, let's say we start with one group this year, we would probably take a trip in 2 years to Tanzania, take a small group of people as ambassadors from our church to meet with that group, to give them a face, to tell them that we love them and that we support them, and get to pray over them and be an ambassador to them. It was an amazing experience, and I would love to take people with me to go back and see those groups. One of the things that First Mansfield does is that a number of years ago they decided to take their Christmas Eve offering, every bit of it, and hand it to ZOE Empowers. And so that's how they pay for their 18 groups. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we don't take a Christmas Eve offering. We've never taken, since I've been here, we have not taken a Christmas Eve offering. It's my suggestion that we start taking one, and we put all of that money towards ZOE Empowers. We could also let it be what VBS uses as their missional fundraising effort, which you guys raised $1,500 or $2,000 this year. The last 2 years, it's been close to $2,000 that they've raised. And we put that towards ZOE Empowers, and we just see what the Lord does with it. If at the end of 3 years we feel like we want to do something different, we do something different. But I was so unbelievably impressed with this program. And a lot of that was, I just wanted to go in ignorant, so I could, so I could just see what it's really like on the ground. And I was unbelievably impressed. So, what kind of questions do you guys have of me? Sorry? Okay, ZOE is the Greek word for life. And so this is a ministry to offer life. Yeah. Nancy? We're in Arusha, Tanzania, which is in the northern part. Arusha. If you start to Google Arusha, it'll almost definitely put Tanzania there, and you can see exactly where it is. There's a mountain called Meru, which is just to the north that you'll see there. Yeah. Lynn? The facilitators do some of the more broad training, those 6 pillars that I mentioned, but the specific training for their jobs, they find local leaders in the community to do the training. Right. So yeah. So someone who's a tailor, they find a local community person to do that training for them. Yeah. Yeah. They start a new group every year. Yeah, every year they start multiple new groups. Like every facilitator probably gets, if you got 15, they probably get 5 new groups each year, and they graduate 5 groups. Yeah. You know, I didn't ask that question specifically. I think that, you know, ZOE as a larger organization figures it out, but they're hopeful that churches like us will come on board. They said, well, there were 8 groups that were not supported yet, but by the time we left, because David made the commitment, there were 7 groups that were not supported yet when we left. Yeah. Yeah. What it seemed like, what we began to understand in Tanzania, I think that there is some public education to a certain extent. It's like primary, and then beyond that they have to pay. But even in their primary education, they have a uniform they have to buy, they have books that they have to buy, stationery, all sorts of stuff. So the expenses, while you and I could be like, well, just go to CVS and get those things, you can't. It's much more expensive than they can afford. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. It's not like here at all. It's hard to explain that, but yeah. Allison? No English. You know, the people who are more educated did speak English. A lot of them have gone away to school, you know, so there's basically an upper echelon and poverty, and there's not much middle ground. Many of the more wealthy people socioeconomically went away to school, to Kenya, or one of the people we met had gone all the way to India to go to school. So English becomes a language that's helpful to them. But in the villages and with all of the kids, they all spoke Swahili. That was the only thing that they spoke. So we learned a lot of Swahili, and I've already forgotten a lot of it. But asante means thank you. You know, we would say asante sana, which means thank you very much, or karibu means you're welcome. So karibu santa means you're welcome very much. Yeah. Jambo means hello. Yeah. We learned how to say God bless you, which was Mungu akubariki, means God bless you. Mungu is the word for God. And so just those little things were helpful for us along the way. Yeah, Dave?
You mentioned the one woman who was the mentor.
Yes. They told us that they do try to, so the facilitators embed themselves into the community as much as possible. They spend a lot of their time trying to get to know people in the communities so that they can utilize them for a number of things, like it helps to get them in, to find out who can do the trainings and who can help get businesses started. But it also helps them identify which kids need the help. And so they said that she was pretty unique, that she was more invested than most mentors are. But they didn't say that like they looked down on the other mentors for that. They just said she's just hyper invested in it. Yeah. Deanne?
So the $9,000 a year, does that go to pay the salary of the facilitators? Does it go for supplies?
I think that the...
Groups without funding.
Right. I think that the $9,000 a year goes to kind of all of the above. But actually, you can go on ZOEempowers.org and you can find that one of the things that they said over there, and they even say on Zoe's website, financial transparency is a huge part of their ministry. So you can actually go and get a report of every dollar that is spent there. But they say that the cost of one kid for all 3 years, I think I heard it was $350 for all 3 years. But then you're talking about 25 kids in one group. The facilitator does have to have a salary. and on up the chain, but it seemed like it primarily goes to support the kids. They even said that they had a group come in last year who said, we want to see all of your books. And so they said, okay. There was an accountant that we met, and she sat down with them and spent a couple of days going through all their books, and the person walked out going, looks great, you know. So financial transparency was a big part of their ministry. Pam? It would be me calling the ZOE. Well, I think that we would leave it up to our leadership team. But if you want to voice your opinion, we would love to have that. You know, you can send an email to me, joseph@fmcw.org, and say, I really think we should support this. Or you may say, I don't think we should support this. And we would love to have that feedback. Any conversations you guys want to have individually, I'd love to have those with you. So I think that's the way forward. But I think our leadership team, our missions team, and then our leadership team would probably make that decision together. And then we would hope to have that by Christmas time so we could communicate that to ZOE on the ground in Tanzania, and then we could communicate it with our congregation. Yep. Hang on, somebody in the back had a question, but I didn't see whose hand it was. Oh, it was you, Donna. So Christianity and Islam are the two primary religions within the country. In the Arusha area, Christianity was much more prevalent than Islam, but there were some Muslims around. Other than that, there really weren't. There were some other kind of tribal religions that we would see every once in a while, but Christianity was the primary one. ZOE, of course, is a Christian ministry, and they don't hide that, and so they actually accept any student into their group. In fact, that girl Salma that you saw her head where she's Muslim, but they preach the gospel. They have a pastor who talks about what the scriptures tell us of who God is, and they don't ostracize the Muslims, but you're part of the group, and this is what you're going to hear. They're not really interested in using it as an evangelism tool, necessarily. But, of course, they're sharing who Jesus is and why he's important for our lives. So that was kind of neat to see. Lynn? Those who needed medical care, they find them medical insurance, and they also help them figure out how they're going to pay for their medical needs. Primarily in that first part, too, they really want to get them healthy so that they can be successful. I think that being in the healthcare system, is that what you're wondering, as a job? That seems to be another level of education that they would have to work their way into. So actually a couple of kids from that first year group had goals for who they want to be that were way outside of what are realistic. Some of them wanted to be footballers, soccer players. And then others, one of them wanted to be a lawyer. And so they say they never shoot down dreams. They never shoot down dreams, but what they do say is, here's a path to get there. And the first step is to become financially independent. The first path is to be able to eat and provide, and then you can go from there and see if you can do your education. No. Most of them have aged out. They're 16 to 23. Yeah. Any other questions? Say that again. Zion City Church. I didn't ask a lot of denominational questions, actually. I couldn't tell you. Say that again. No, not all the donors were American, but this is a ministry that started out of America, so I think primarily they are mostly American. And they're not all churches. I mean, there's some individuals. Actually, a lot of these groups would get up and they would say, we're so thankful for our sponsors, and they would say their names. So the kids know exactly who is sponsoring them. Yeah. Nancy. For a month. $9,000 for the year. Yeah. For a whole group. Yeah, I don't know how they're doing their numbers, but what I do know is that the group is $9,000 for the year. And if you support a group for its whole life, that's 3 years, so $27,000. Yep. Any other questions? You know, it wasn't like Guatemala where we had a lot of time with the students individually for a period of time, or we didn't see them regularly, you know, like every day, like we did in Guatemala. This was more them, you know, we would dance and have fun, and we played a couple games, musical chairs. One time we played this cool game with sticks where everybody gets in a circle and they hold a stick, and they have to run to the next stick and leave this one, and whoever falls is out, you know, that kind of thing. We would do that kind of stuff, and then we would hear their stories, we would bless them, and then we would get on a bus and leave because we had to get to other groups. So not a lot of that, but we did get an opportunity to buy stuff from each of them, or not everybody, you know, you're not going to buy vegetables from them, but we bought things like, I bought Mary Catherine and Lydia some stuff from Salma, who was the tailor. We got little trinkets that one of the groups sold in markets. Just that kind of stuff we were able to do with them. And they gave us some, like each group wanted to give us something that was like, that was like a big thing for them. They wanted to give it. And you're like, no, we're not going to take anything from you, you know. No, but that's an honor to them. So they gave me some lotion. So that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, as far as I understand, it's $9,000, and yeah, I think you can pay in a lump sum or you can pay on a monthly basis. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, then it was 21 hours on the way back. We got on a plane in Kilimanjaro International Airport, which then goes to Zanzibar. You guys have heard of Zanzibar? I was on the ground there, stayed in the plane for an hour, and then we flew back up to Istanbul and then back over. We got back Friday night at 8 p.m. Got in bed by 9:30, I think. Woke up at 7. Was eating lunch the next day, and it was like someone took the batteries out of me, you know, and I just had to go take a nap. You saw me that Sunday morning, but I was kind of halfway here, and by Monday I felt pretty normal, so I was really surprised by all that. But really, really grateful for the opportunity to go on the trip and to represent you guys. Yeah, Nelly. We stayed in a hotel in Arusha that was a nice hotel. I did not put a picture of the village bathrooms up. They call them washrooms, and it's basically an outhouse with a squatty potty and a bucket of water. So you don't shake anyone's hand with your left hand, because that's used to clean yourself up. And I never used the bathroom in that way in the villages. You know, I knew I had a toilet in my own hotel room. So, but there was a moment where you had to walk across a really big field to go use the bathroom, and I had to go use the bathroom, so I had to walk across this big field and go to this washroom, and you know, that was just part of the life there. But it's neat because you get to see the way they live their life. I don't know if neat is the right word, but you get a sense of what it's like to live their life. Yeah. But we stayed in a hotel, and we ate food in restaurants, and it was good. Yeah. Okay. No, I mean everybody in the community. I mean, you know, everybody needs clothes to wear, and they need vegetables from the marketplace, and yeah, you know, their clientele are other people in the community. Just because they're in poverty doesn't mean they can't afford anything. It just means if you go there, you'd be like, oh, you're wearing second, third-hand clothing. You're barely making it by, but you do have enough money to buy food and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Yeah, you guys, seriously, I would love your feedback. So whatever, you know, if you have thoughts about whether you want to support ZOE or not, please send me a note on that. You know, the whole time we were there, it was like, I want to be like, yeah, we'll do it. But then I was like, no, this is our church. It's your decision. This is your church. And so I did not want to make that decision for us. So let's do that together. And if you want to go on Zoe's website, ZOEempowers.org, you can see a little bit more about them and learn more. But I would love your feedback on it so we can kind of move forward. So thanks for coming tonight, y'all.